Oh, hello. Thank you to Crafting with All Brands for having me back to the YouTube hop. And this month's theme is, I think, is Winter Wonderland. I say think because my brain's all over the place, but I think it's Winter Wonderland. So I thought I'd do something Christmassy. Now, I'm a little bit obsessed with fodder at the moment. So, and if you don't know if that's a term you're not familiar with, fodder is sort of creating lots of things that you can use at another time in your art journals and whatever. So I'm a little bit obsessed with that, and I'm actually taking part in Willow Wonder's fodder school, which is rather wonderful. But this is something that I've come up with that I thought might be a bit of a nice thing. So I've been making these are some little stars, but I've been making these trees, and of course we can use them we could put a hole in it and use it for a tag. We can use it for cards, we can use it for all sorts. So I thought what I'll do today is I'm going to show you how I've done these trees. Let me just pop that over there out the way, and then I'll show you how I put it together to make, I think that's a nice card front, or a journal page, whatever you fancy really. So, and I've used to make my trees, I've used this stencil. Please don't judge me because I know it's I'm really not very good at cleaning my stencils. I sort of wait until they really need it, and then I pop a dishwasher tablet in a bowl with them, and that is how I clean in one go. So this is the main stencil I'm using. I think I need to I'm just going to pop it so you can see it, because it's got a few little sections to it. So it's really cool. There's this element here which obviously comes out of there, and again you can use that to do things with. I've used the stencil on this one, and I've used my pencil in the same way that I'm going to do these trees. I've used my pencil to draw the shapes. I think I've got it the other way around, to draw the shapes, and then I've used watercolor paint on there and then outlined with pen. So anyway, that's one of the stencils. Then there's this one, and where's the other one gone? There is another one which I've seemed to have moved. Where have I put that? I thought oh, it's beside me. Are you shouting at me now through the camera? I couldn't see it because everything was in the way. So yes, and then there's this tree too, which yes, you can see that. Also, as well as the stencils, you get the cutout element, which is then becomes a mask. So you get those, and you also get the masks from the snowflakes in this stencil. So there's a whole ton you can do with it, and we are going to be using these trees. I mean, you could use the stencil part to do it, but I prefer drawing around the mask. So we're going to use those bits, and we'll also be using this top element as well. And this top element is really handy for all kinds of projects. I've just used it across the top there with the 3 rectangles from this stencil, so it works really nicely. And then I've also used the word joy, and the word joy is in this stencil, which is, sorry, both of these stencils are art inspirations stencils. So I've used the word joy from the middle of this one, which is another fabulous stencil with all kinds of possibilities to use the whole thing or mask off different words. So those are the ones that I'm using. To start off, I'm using, this is Pink Frog watercolor cardstock. I find it it's a really nice, if you're just getting into your watercolors, it's a great cardstock to get, because it's really inexpensive, so you can just use it as and when. It's lovely. So I'm just drawing around these masks, and don't panic too much about it. It's one of those things that if you get it a little bit off the edge or off the line, who is going to know? You are the only person who is going to know. Nobody else knows how it's supposed to be. So I've got that one. I'll just do 3. Shall I do, actually I can fit 4 on here, so I'll do 4. So I'm just drawing around this, and this is something I really enjoy doing with stencils. There's another really good Art Inspirations stencil, and I use this exact same process, and I made myself an absolute ton of leaves to use. I'll show you the stencil because I've got it just behind me, I think. Yeah. It's this one with the leaves, and you've got again the leaf masks and the leaves in the actual stencil. And I did exactly the same process I'm going to do today with the trees I did with these leaves, and you can just make yourself a whole stack of leaves, which are really handy to use on lots of different projects. So yeah, I definitely recommend these 2 stencils for building up your fodder, but this one is obviously very much Christmas fodder, although I suppose you could use it at other times of the year too. So bear with me, as I'm not the quickest crafter that there is. I do take a bit of time. There we go, there's that one, and I'll do one more. These should fit on here. Yeah, it does. Now I'm going to do these in watercolor, but there's nothing stopping you from using any medium that you like. So if you like using Lindy's, if you like using I like using Lindy's too, actually, but any watercolor, brushes, watered down acrylics, anything that you want to use, you can use. And you could always go through, if you don't feel certain about this, go through the stencil to add colour, but I would recommend that you do it freehand, because this way we'll add the colour, we'll add the paints, and we're going to be using watercolour and a little bit of acrylic. And then if you're a little bit lost as to where your lines are, you can always use the stencil or your mask back on top to draw around it. But anyway, let's move on. We've got the basic shapes now, and I'm going to get I've got these. I love these. I've had these for so long and they're very well used. These are my Art by Marlene Bold and Bright collection, and they're one of those paints I've had for ages. I don't even know if these ones are still available. I know you can get there's a bigger pan set that she does now, which looks fantastic, and that'll probably be when these ones are closer to being gone. I shall probably invest in that. If that's, I mean, goodness knows when these are going to run out, because they do last a long time. So I've got my watercolors, and I've got, I think this is a size 6 round brush, which is a good, no, it's a 7, sorry. This is a size 7 round brush, and a size 6 or a 7 is a really good size and a round brush for doing loose watercolors, like we're going to do here. And I'm going to keep it quite wet. I'm just adding a little bit of water now, just to, I'm not going over the lines if I can help it, but I'm just adding a little bit of watercolor to help make sure that my color moves nicely. And I'm just checking the camera, because again I haven't normally in the past used my phone, so it's taking a little bit of getting used to. Right, so I'm going to start with a nice light green colour, and I'm just very loosely putting this on here, and I'm not going to get too precious about it. And if it goes over the lines, it really doesn't matter. It's really not a problem, because we're going to be doing lots of other things to this. So I'm just adding this and adding more water, keeping it really wet and loose, because that is how we want it. So now I've got very wet watercolor on there. I'm going to take a darker colour. Now I'm not going to just stick it straight on there, because I want to make sure it's not too dark. So I've just put it on my mat first, or I could put it on my my palette. You have to excuse the noise. I'll just tell you what I'm doing here. I'm dotting the colour just like this. I'm going to come back in a minute and spread it, but I'm just dotting it to start with. So yeah, you have to excuse any mad noises you can hear. I've been waiting for the best time to film, and I've given up waiting. So if you hear any noise, I do apologise, but I live with my, well, they live with me. My granddaughter and my daughter live with me, and she's 5 and full of life. So I'm going back now with a very wet brush, and I'm just kind of moving that darker line a bit, just doing little strokes. There's not really much involved in this. It's not too difficult, and you can do these in any colour combinations you want. As you saw, I did blue and pink earlier. You can do anything you want. Well, that paint's drying up a little bit, but we can still get some movement out of it. So that's kind of how I've done that, and I've made sure to add plenty of water into it as I'm going, because that gives some interesting pooling and some little cells sometimes, so I quite like that. So then for the other tree, I am taking that light colour again, getting some more water in there, so I want it nice and wet again. So, and whatever colours you're using, just start with your lighter colour, and then you can add the dark colour in. So again, I've put that there, so I've got a ruler there just to make sure that I don't go out of the frame too much, because like I said, I don't do this on my phone very often, and I'm having to get used to a slightly different way of doing things. So, and you just stop when you're ready to stop. But I can imagine sprinkling some brushos or lindies, or any of those things. I think Paper Artsy do a version of those sprinkly type things. So I'm going to finish these other two off while we're here, because I might as well. And so I'm just trying to keep my brush as wet as possible. Coming back in with some more of that lovely green colour. What's it called? Zest of Life, this green's called. It's so nice. Well, I have to say, I mean, I've got lots of watercolours because I'm a little bit obsessed with them, and I've got some Daniel Smith ones, I've got some handmade ones, I've got all kinds. I've got really cheap ones, I've got really expensive ones, and I have to say, if you look about, you can really get some great paints for sensible prices. I find all of the Studio Light paints are very good for the money, you know. I mean, they are, what you get for what you pay is unmatched, really. So again, I'm doing the dots a little bit more. And then I'm coming back in and just moving that paint about a little bit. And because it's nice and wet, it moves quite easily. And obviously you paint yours how you want to paint them, but this is just what worked for me when I was doing them. That needs to come down a bit. There we go. So I really like how these are turning out. And then we'll do this one. Again, keeping it really wet and really loose, and not worrying about going over any edges. Oh, I just had a horrible thought then. I'm just kind of looking up over my phone to keep checking I'm in picture, and I couldn't quite see if I was recording or not. And I just had a little second of panic, thinking, oh no, I haven't pressed record properly. But it's okay, it's recording. Thank goodness. Right, I quite like that. That just needs a little bit more water in there. So they're coming out quite nicely. I like them. This one's a little more faded. I might have put a little bit too much water in it, so I'm just going to add a little bit more paint. It's going to look nice and wintry. There we go. And I'll add a little bit more paint to this one as well. But just enjoy the process of putting paint down on the paper, because if you go over the shape, it doesn't matter, because we've got the masks or the stencils, whichever way you want to use it, that we can put on top, which will allow us to reshape if we need to. Right, so I've done that. I'm happy with the colour I've got down there now. Oh, I moved my ruler, didn't I? Right, there we go. So now I'm gonna, I mean, in an ideal world, you would leave them on the side to dry, and you could also sprinkle a little bit of salt, or rice is another interesting one to sprinkle on. If you sprinkle on wet watercolours, when it dries, you get some really interesting shapes. So there we go. Let's dry these off. Yeah, not far off. I'm just turning it over to get a dry from the back as well. And there we go. I think that's probably about done. Oh no, that one's still a little bit wet. You really want them dry before you do anything else. Okay, let's have a little feel. Yep, they feel good. Okay, so now I've got the watercolour down, the next thing I want to do is I want to add some little accents. And I really like adding a snowflake onto these, I don't know what you'd call them, these more conical shaped, well they're all conical aren't they, but these planer trees I really like adding a snowflake onto. So I'm just putting my stencil on there, and I'm going to get a little bit of white acrylic paint. There we go. Don't need much at all. In fact, that's probably too much even there. And then I've got a little piece of sponge. If you've got washing up sponges, they're really great to use. You can really use any sort of cheap sponge. Some people can get bags of makeup sponges cheaply, you know, or you get just your average everyday washing up sponge and chop what you need off that. So I'm just using my sponge to daub through my stencil with this white acrylic. And like I said, you know, I did a lot of leaves like this, and you could use any stencil to put on top of another stenciled image, if that makes sense. So it doesn't look particularly like much at the moment, but it will do when we add our pen work to it. So I'm going to put that on there, get my sponge. And just sponge through the stencil. And there's some little, I think they're little bits of snow maybe. And they're quite nice to add as well. In fact, I'm going to add them for sure to the other trees, but I hope that they look a bit like baubles on the other trees. So I've done those ones, and then like I said, these little bits of snow, I worked out that this little section works really nicely on the other trees. It sort of fits enough to use, which I quite like. And I need to get some paint to go through there. I'm going to use, oops, I had a little, I'm going to use this orange. Oh, come here, I don't want to waste you. Sorry, there's a bit of paint that's trying to escape. So I've got a little bit of orange, and I'm just going to go through the stencil. And this to me sort of hints at baubles or berries or something like that. There we go. And that's, it's sort of smudged a little bit, but I'm not too worried, because once it's dried and we add the pen marks to it, it's going to be fine. So it's not really, not a major problem. Now I need to, I'm going to actually dry that before I get wet paint everywhere, which is very much likely to happen because I've already got it where I don't want it. So just drying that paint off. Dry. So now I can grab some tissue in it, because I've already got paint where I don't want it. And let's pop that on there. And we've got that little triangle of dots. Now, if you are a bit like me and can't always trust yourself to not get paint everywhere, I would recommend putting some tape, some washi tape will do the job. Put some washi tape over the elements that you don't want to get. Right, there we go. So it's a little bit messy, but it's going to be fine, I promise. So right, let me get that wet paint out of the way, because we know what will happen if I don't. And I'm just going to just wiping that paint there, because the last time I did this and I went on to the next bit of making this, I ended up getting some paint where I didn't want to get it, so I'm just being a little bit more mindful this time. Right, let's dry that last one off. Now we're drying this off for two reasons. Obviously we don't want it to smudge everywhere, but the other thing is we're going to go into this now with a fine liner, and if you try and use a fine liner on wet acrylic paint, it's not going to end in a particularly happy place. So I'm just mindful of that. Alright, so I've got now a fine liner. The one I'm using at the moment is a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen fine liner, and it's a 0.3, or an S is what it's labelled at by Faber-Castell, but it is a 0.3. It does also have that on there, so it's quite a nice fine tip, but not so fine that you can't see it. And the reason I like a fine tip to do this sort of thing is because I'm going to be doubling back on myself and doubling up the lines, because with this sort of thing, if you try and do this neatly, it just won't look neat. It's like one of those things that's almost impossible to make look neat. But if you don't really worry about it too much, it's fine. So I find if I go around a couple of times, sometimes I will move my pen a little bit away and then go back round in one go. But the one thing I don't try and do is I don't try and get a neat finish on it, because I know that that won't work. And then, so I'm doing this just a bit at a time, not worrying about trying to get round it all in one go, and I'm just going back on myself each time and, you know, wiggling the line a little bit. Now here we're going to make up this bit, so there we go. We've just created our own bit of the design, because it's not on there. And just keep going, and here, even though the paint hasn't completely filled that area, I'm drawing that in because it needs that, in my opinion. You do yours how you like yours to look. And there we go. So that's my tree, that one. Let's do this one. I'm not going to finish all of them because I've already got some that I've made that I can use. And if you spend an afternoon or a couple of hours doing this, you too will have a little bit of fodder, a little box of Christmas trees that you can use on any projects that you see fit. And I can think of lots of projects I would use these on.
again, keeping it really nice and rough. And I don't know if you've noticed, but as I'm going, I'm moving the paper to where it's convenient for me. I'm not trying to get my arm into all sorts of positions to follow the line. I'm moving my paper to follow the line. And that's a lot easier. Okay, and with this one, this tree in particular, like we finished off this bottom piece, I'm also doing the same on this one. I'm just going across because it just, for me, that feels like a nice finish for the tree. And you don't have to follow the line all the way up, you can come up and down. So there we go, that's another one. And here, even though I've kind of made a bit of a squish, I can still go in and do it how I want to do it. And with these, I'm wanting to be sort of in effect like a bauble. Bauble? Bauble? Bauble. Who knows? What I've done is I've taken a white Posca pen. If you've got any white acrylic pen, that will do the job. And I'm just popping a little, little reflection mark on the baubles, and you want them all in the same place because the light would be hitting in the same spot. There we go. So I'm going to finish those two off. I'm going to finish them off later because I want to show you now how to assemble the card I showed you. I'll show you now. I want to show you how I assembled this using my trees. So I've got some trees already done. So I need a piece of card, and I seem to have forgotten to have prepared that, which is not very clever. Bear with me. You would think I would have tons of card to hand, wouldn't you? Right, oh no, I don't want to use that because I'll tell you why I don't want to use that. That is mixed media paper, and mixed media paper just doesn't it doesn't spread colour very well. It's great for using your acrylic paints and things like that, but it doesn't spread water soluble colours very well. Right, so I've got this stencil and I'm putting the squarey bit down because that's what I'm going to use for my background. Now you can for the pink one I did here, I used sprays through this and I just did a few different sprays, and I really liked how that came out. But for the one that we're doing tonight or today, this one I've used Distress Oxide ink pad, so I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to grab my brush.
Now these could do with a bit of a wash, they're a little bit saturated, but it will work because we're going to be blotting with some water, so it might not look quite how I would want it to look at the beginning, but it will by the end. And then what I did is I tore myself just some hills, as you do, and I'm just holding those in place while I add my ink. So I'm just getting some ink. And I'm making sure as I do this to get to the edges of the rectangles, because that's where I'm going to find my definition. Oh, this brush really does need a wash. What happens is with these brushes is as you use them over time, obviously ink gets left in them, and then that ink then stiffens the brush, and you lose the nice finish that you get from a nice soft brush. But like I said, I should get away with it on this because I'm going to be splatting it with water anyway. Right, so I've done that bit, and then I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to pop in a little bit of an extra bit. So, and I'm just going a little bit more gently, yeah, I'm being a little bit more delicate, but I'm also taking the brush around the edges. So this is going to be okay. There we go. So that's sort of given me a bit of a background, and I'm just taking my brush gently around the whole of the edge of each of these rectangles. And it's okay, I don't want lots of colour like we've got at the top. I just want a little bit of colour, just because it will emphasize the separate boxes. So I've done that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this colour again, and I've got this text stamp which I absolutely love, and I use it in lots of projects. And as you know, I recommend everybody find a text stamp that you like and just use that, because I've got some dark ink on here that I didn't really want on there, but it'll be all right. It could be worse. Yeah, find a text stamp that you like and just keep it on your desk and add it to projects, because it just really adds a little bit of depth and texture to anything you do. Right, so hopefully you can see that. Yes, you can. So I've finished with that now, and what I need to do is I need to get myself a bit of kitchen roll, and I need to just add some splats to this.
And then I'm gonna just put kitchen roll over there to pick up that ink. And it gives quite a nice effect. I'm going to see if I can get that a little bit of darker ink that I managed to get on here. Oh, would you believe it? It's not coming up. Never mind, we can stick a star on it. It's fine. And there. So just playing with it until I'm happy with the overall look, and I am. That's looking like a winter's scene, so I can take my stencil off now, and I've got these lovely panels. So I'm just going to dry that, because obviously we've been spraying. And this is a really nice background for all kinds of projects. I love a little triptych panel. It's really nice. There we go. So that's off there. I'm going to just trim this now. So let's get this in here, and I'm just going to trim this down. There we go. Save that for another project. And I have a flat edge now, so I just need to line everything up with that. And there. Like that. And the last. There we go. There. Let me just make sure that's it. So I trimmed my panelled piece off now. So that's going to be ready to go as soon as, ooh, sorry about that. It's going to be ready to go as soon as I'm ready. So let's look. These little stars I got from this stencil here, as you can see. And I just sponged through some paint, and then I did the same sort of scruffy line effect around the edges of them, so that they would match what I'm doing. Equally, one of the other things I did think about doing was doing a punch, you know, a star punch, and punching out my stars. So I'm just having a little play with this to decide how I want it, and I'm happy with that. I think that's really nice. So I'm going to put my word joy in here, and I'm just thinking about what colour I want to do it, but it's going to need to go about there. So now I know where it needs to go, I can do it. So what colour do I want to do it in? It might be nice to do it in a green, actually, because obviously the trees are green. So again, for this stenciling, I'm using some acrylic paint. Way too much, but never mind. This acrylic paint is Liquitex Basics, and it's light olive green, and it's one of my favourite colours. I absolutely love it. And I'm going to get a piece of sponge, and I'm going to just go through this stencil, just taking my time, because I want to get the paint
to show up. There we go. Just popping it through there. That's probably about right. And the same with this. Just sponging the paint through. And these stencils are cut so beautifully. They really are quite easy to use. Yeah, and the joy. And then once I've got this stenciled, I'll take that off, and I'm actually going to get a little paintbrush, and I'm gonna just fill in this. I'm tapping it because I want it to fit in with the rest of the word, because it's been done with a sponge. If I come in and do paint strokes now, it's going to look a bit odd, but because I'm tapping it in, it kind of blends in with the rest of it. So I've done my joy. Let's wash that brush quickly, and I'm going to just clean up this paint because we know what will happen. There we go, just cleaning that up. And then once this is dry, we can do the outlines. If you're doing this, if you're following what I've done, you do not want to draw around your boxes before you do your letters, because some of your letters may well overlap, and so you want to make sure that you've got them in place before you do any outline work. So that should be dry. So I'm going to take my 0.3 pen again, and now this time I'm going to outline my letters, and I'm doing the same method of going back on myself and just creating a bit of an outline, but not trying to do it too tidily. So there we go. So you can see that little I can't remember the name of it. Bridge, that's it, isn't it? Bridge. That's what they call the bits that are left out in stencils. They call them bridges. So I have filled in that bridge, and you wouldn't know that it wasn't this way in the first place. And that's a really easy thing to do with lots of stencils, if you want to. Sometimes it's nice to have that stenciled effect. Right, there we go. I've got my joy. And so, oops, no, I forgot then, didn't I? Now I can start to go around my boxes. And if you don't want to go around them, don't go around them. I just think because everything has a line around it, I just think it works. But you know, equally, you don't have to.
you can do it exactly how you want to. There we go. Nearly done. And again, I'm moving the card for me to be in the right place to draw my wiggly lines. And it is something that you can really take your time over and not rush, or you might find that you draw better lines if you go quickly. It's one of those things that you've got to find your way with. There we go. And that's it. So that's my background all done, which I really like. And I decided where my trees were going to go, so now I can stick them in place. You could use any adhesive that you would normally use to stick them. And I like to sort of have the bases coming just off the rectangles. There you go, this one. And then I think I want these two like that. Yes, I do. So let's do this one down first. There, and I'm adding let's have a touch more glue on them. Adding that one as well. I really like that. And then I've got these stars, which I can add. So I'm going to add that on there. That one there. I'm kind of going to the places that I've got the little marks that I wasn't too keen on, and this is a great way of covering them up. There we go. So I've got my little stars on, and then all I need to do now is I need to mat that up and pop it on a card front, and it's good to go. So that is my kind of winter wonderland project. I hope you like it. So I've basically created lots of tree fodder so that you can use it for all kinds of different projects, and then I've used the same stencil then to create a background, and well, this has made a card front. So I hope you like it. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to Crafting with All Brands for having me. Please, if you've enjoyed it, please press like, you know, or subscribe or comment or any of those things, because that all helps. And yeah, I will hopefully see you next month. So thank you again. Thanks. Bye bye.